I was about to say, Dante, I feel like if I were to describe you, I would describe you as a creative genius. Like you're the kind of person I'm so serious. Like you have a very creative part of yourself, whether it's in all your like you just need to create something, and then you have a deep technical understanding, and you're able to bring both of them together. If you were to describe yourself, how would you describe yourself?
I'm just one of those just curious mad scientist, kind of like I follow my curiosity, and it's kind of a gift and a curse. It's mostly a curse in that I'm all over the place. Like anybody that knows me knows I'm all over the place, and it's because of that curiosity. Like it's that curiosity that just pulls me in a million different directions. And sometimes, there have been times where it's been a detriment, where that focus, kind of the focus. So as we start to tackle a lot more of these interesting problems that don't really have a clear-cut answer, and we get to be a part of defining what it is, like AI, like we're still trying to figure it out. You know what I mean? So as those type of things emerge, it's an exciting time for the curious folks. There's a lot of stuff for us to poke at.
I feel like a lot of children start off curious, and then it's adulthood that like wipes away that curiosity from them. How did you remain curious? Like, how did you fight against that system?
I failed to mature. No, no. I think it's always been sort of this. There used to be this store. Not many of you remember, but it was called Toys R Us, and their motto was like, "I don't want to grow up." And I think it's the things that come with growing up. It's the, now we have bills. Now we have to think about things like car insurance, these very boring but necessary things. And I have, again, to a detriment, I have been blessed with sort of an absence of prioritizing those sort of foundational things, and it's let me stay curious and explore, and it's kind of it's kind of worked out. And I think that all of us face sort of that decision. So for some of us, it's gradually, where it's one bill becomes two bills, becomes three bills, and then the next thing you know, we're locked into a career at whatever Starbucks, because we have to maintain those fundamental things. Especially now in this kind of where as the middle class has shrunk, it's people are working 3 jobs, working check to check, just for those very, very foundational things. But for me, I don't know. It definitely has been a blessing in some cases, but in other cases, I let other things slip sometimes that shouldn't be slipping. And like I said, it's to a detriment. It's definitely a flip side to that coin. That's not all super beneficial and super exciting and super cool and exploratory. There are little things that slip through the crack on a constant basis. And I'm trying to get better with that and still maintain that, still be childlike in my curiosity. Like I hope I don't lose that, because like learning new things, learning how things work, those are the things that, push me from one day to the next day. So yeah, but you're absolutely right. There are several opportunities to kill the inner child and that inner curiosity. And then I think that another big part of it is too, like we find out that things that we're told are not true. And so a lot of people, they lose trust in the information that, you know what I mean? That curiosity kind of gets killed, and that, oh, I was curious. The answer that they gave me was a lie, and they knew it was a lie. Why should I believe anything? And they just end up living their life miserable. Understandably.
I was about to say, you keep on describing how like you do have so many wonderful things that come with your curiosity, and then the downsides of that. And I feel like I described it as a creative genius, but now I'm like, every villain has their origin story and every hero has their origin story. And that makes them the complex person they are today. What is your origin story?
Yeah. My origin story. Oh boy. So I'm from Oakland. I'm from Oakland, California, and my origin story is I'm from East Oakland. I was from the village. Yeah, and so I grew up in a relatively rough neighborhood, um, comparatively to the other people that are in the tech industry. Like I grew up in a rough place, and um, sorry, let me silence this. Yeah, and so my growing up was a huge identity crisis. Like, I was one of 6 kids in my school that wasn't black, and like it was that kind of growing up where, I was trying to figure out who I was, and in the process, kind of learned to evolve and to fit in with anybody. And so again, that was a blessing. Like I learned how to fit in. I learned how to, the crowd that I was in, I learned how to fit in for survival. It was all survival at first. And so, yeah, I grew up in a rough, I had been shot a couple of times. And then when I graduated high school, I decided I wanted to make films. I wanted to make movies. And so I packed everything I had in a Camaro. And my dad used to, once a week, we'd go to the movies to escape Oakland. Like for 2 hours, we would have this 2 hours where we were just in a different world. And so I decided I wanted to do that. So I moved to LA to learn how to make movies, and tried to get into USC. My grades weren't good enough to get into USC. They told me to go to community college. The stuff that they were teaching in community college, I had already read on my own. It's like, fuck this. And so I went out and bought the system that I wanted to learn, the whole thing that I wanted to learn. And then started doing music videos, and then got into music, and then ended up like actually in the music business. And so I was producing, got signed to Sony. I was in a band, and then I got arrested and went to prison for 5 years. And and in prison I learned how to paint with coffee, actually. So yeah, I learned how to paint with coffee and Kool-Aid. I was painting, and then the painting started to they started to get popular on Reddit, and started to gain like a following on Reddit. And one of the people who were following was at the time was like the senior vice president of product, this dude named Dan. He started this thing called Reddit Gifts. And he asked, when I got out, and I would document my stuff on Reddit. I was like, I'm looking for a job. I can't get a job. Applied everywhere. El Pollo Loco. Nobody's hiring felons right now. And yes, he said, do you know how to use Photoshop? And I lied, and I said, yeah. And so I lied, and I said, yeah. And then and so I locked myself in a sort of my buddy Paul's office. I locked it. He said I could use one of his computers, and I locked myself in for one weekend and just went through all the tutorials and learned how to use Photoshop, and then started doing ads for them. And then the ads started performing well enough to where they offered me a full-time job. First time in my life I ever had healthcare. First time in my life, I had actually had a, paycheck. Everything else up to that point had been hustling. Everything else up to that point had just been grinding. So, it was definitely a shift. It was definitely a shift. And so I'm not sure there's a single origin story. There's so many forks in the road, and, trying to do the right thing and ending up in a shitty predicament. And that kind of pushed me forward. But that curiosity and learning sort of the creative aspect of making something out of nothing is so profound to me. Like making something out of nothing is so crazy to me. It's as close to God as we can get, right? Like this interview, this podcast, your show could not exist without you. And the idea of that is so powerful to me. So kind of chasing that idea that we with nothing can make something that didn't exist before we were here. That's always been the backbone of everything I did, whether it was music or movies or, the stuff I did with tech while you were there, and stuff I continue to do. It's this idea that, we get to do something with our time, and we get to leave something behind with our time that didn't exist without us. And so that's sort of, that's my MO. That's what drives me. And if we can do that, if we can leave something behind, let's make it fucking beautiful. Let's make it special. And so that's kind of been the backbone in everything that I do. since I was a kid. Yeah.
Ever since I started making stuff, I realized how not just like you said, creation is the closest to godlike ability that we have, but how creating something helps you create yourself. How when you bring every new
Yeah.
product into the world, you discover a new part of yourself. When you were painting with like
Yeah,
Kool-Aid
absolutely.
and literally and coffee, how did the process of creation help like create you? How did you feel the paint
Oh,
like literally change you?
it became so I got a letter. So the reason why I started was I got a letter from my son. My son sent me a letter in prison. And when you're in prison, those letters from your loved ones, they are the most important, valuable possessions that you have. You know what I mean? It's like your piece of the outside world from a loved one. And so I had this letter from my son, and I'm reading it. I'm drinking coffee. We all drink coffee in there. And then I spill some coffee on his letter. And I got so furious that my stupid ass couldn't even keep this one thing. But then the coffee dried. And when the coffee dried, I saw a picture of me and him inside of it. And so that led to me just throwing coffee on everything. Like I would throw coffee on all kinds of paper, trying to pull things out of it. And it became my therapy. It became the thing that I used to lean on to survive in there. Like some guys, they work out. That's how they survive. Some guys, they do whatever. That's how they survive. Some guys don't survive at all. They just freak out and start fighting everybody. But that became my therapy. And so when I got out, or as I developed that talent, as I developed that skill, I continued to pour all of my those kind of uncomfortable feelings that we have, the depression, the isolation, the inadequacy, I just poured it out in my paintings. And so all of my paintings and drawings and everything that I do, you can see, like if you look a little bit deeper, you'll see some emotion that I was scared to confront is there. Like it's there somewhere. And so that became the way that I stay sane. And you can tell, like if I go a week without painting, if I go a week without drawing, if I go a week, I start to become I start to become a bum. Like I start to become this really, mean person. And it's because I don't have that outlet. I don't have that outlet. And painting and drawing, those things are pretty unique in that you don't really need much to do it. Like I said, you have Kool-Aid, you have reds, blues, you have yellows, and lemonade, coffee, you have, your okra, you have your burnt sienna, all in the different shades of coffee. So that became my therapy. And I think to your point, when we do create, it does help define who we are, because the things that we create become tied to our identity. Like that is who we are, especially if it's authentic and it's genuine. We are leaving a piece of who we truly are out on the table. That's what we're leaving behind. We're leaving a piece of us. And then, that starts to define who we are, those pieces that get left on the table. And so, definitely it's definitely something that I cannot live without. Now I just can't live without it. I'll turn into an asshole. I'll turn into an asshole. And even while I was, even when I do my tech stuff, I make a point to paint. Like, yeah, that's cool. The digital shit is cool, but you have to bring it back to the analog. And I like to touch the water and do all of that. And it keeps me grounded, and it adds a perspective to the stuff that I do in tech that, normally would not have been there if there was no, if that outlet wasn't there. Yeah.
I was about to ask, in your art, is there one emotion that you consistently see yourself trying to get out into the world? And what emotion is that? And where do you think that came from?
I think it is this idea of isolation. In that, there's so many people here, and especially in some of the more populous cities, the Los Angeles or the New York, we're bumping up against all different types of people all the time. But I think it's a universal feeling that we all have, that we are alone sometimes. And I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with being alone. But it's still something that feels uncomfortable to us. And I don't know if that's at a species level. Like I love like just being at home alone, but being at home alone is different from being lonely. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference, you know what I mean? And so I think that when that feeling of, you know, does another human being know that I exist? That feeling is something that's universal when it comes to us, especially now with social media, and it's all, how many followers do you have? How many viewers do you, like, how many people are looking at you? Those feelings of isolation are the majority. And as I try to express that uncomfort with that, it's something that is, when I feel it, I get it out on paper. And you know, if other people can relate to it, then that one person that sees it knows, oh shit, I'm not alone. I'm not weird for this feeling of isolation. I'm not weird for, you know what I mean? Like I don't have a monopoly on that feeling of loneliness. And so even that one little tiny thing of, oh, I'm not alone in my loneliness is enough to break out of the loneliness more often than not. So I think at the end, like, we just want to be understood too. Like, we just want to be understood. That's all.
I always say, like, it's always good to have that one fact that makes the terrible ideas you have about yourself no longer credible. If everybody else might be experiencing some form of loneliness, maybe I'm not broken. There's nothing wrong with me. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that, you know, I think there's more acceptance to the fact that we are different now than there was before. And I think that Reddit plays a huge part in letting people who feel different feel like they are not alone. And I think that's one of the reasons, you know, I continue to I'm like one of the longest tenured people still there. And that's also, you know, one, loyalty, because they gave me a job when nobody fucking would. And two, because I believe that it plays a part in the world in exactly that, in letting people know that they're not alone, letting them know it doesn't matter what kind of weird shit you're into, you're not broken. Like, there are other people that are like you, and here's where you can congregate. And so, those two things are sort of the reason why, you know, I don't even look at offers from even when we were at our high and offers were coming in, I don't look at those. It's more, you know, I want to make sure that there's good work being done there. Not that there won't if I left, but I still feel passionate about the work that I do there. So if that passion ever like dies, then that's a different story. But I think that it plays an important part in the world.
I was about to say, so you just got out of prison and you're having difficulties finding a job. And by this like serendipity, this cosmic alignment, you get an offer to work at Reddit. And literally Reddit is in the Bay Area, so not that far away from East Oakland. Far away enough for people in the Bay, but not that far away in the largest scheme of things. And I've always felt this juxtaposition of, you have San Francisco, these trillion-dollar companies, and then you have parts of Oakland that are literally food deserts. And somebody coming from, like you said, East Oakland, how did you deal with the fact that now you were in this environment so close to home, but still so far away from home?
I was actually released in Los Angeles. And so when I got released and I got hired, there was no Los Angeles office. We were in a WeWork. There was only two of us. And now the office, there's like, I think there's 150 people in the LA office now. But when I got hired, there was no office. It was a WeWork. And so it was more, now you're in the tech industry. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was this sort of ultra intimidating thing. Like, someone going from, you know, people watching me piss and shit every day, stand up at my rack every day, into this ultra elite sort of pocket of industry that was a mystery, but also like the promised land for so many people. I did then, and I still do, like, suffer from what do you call that? The complex, the imposter syndrome. It's imposter syndrome, and I still do, like, every day, every single day. Like, I still suffer from this imposter syndrome. Like, I don't belong here, not in a bad way. Is just in that I didn't go to Stanford. I didn't I didn't do those things that people who work in this industry did to be here. I'm missing some of the tool set. I need to, you know what I mean? Like I'm inadequate. Again, that feeling of inadequacy. I'm inadequate. And so what that did was twofold. One, it made me push harder in my position to prove myself. It made me, pull all-nighters where another person might not have. But two, it also made me do this thing where again, a detriment. There's a flip side to the coin. I also undervalued my work. Does that make sense? Like I undervalued my work. I felt hesitant to ask for the raise or the bonus. I felt hesitant to go after those things that people who would have come up under the regular channels would have asked for immediately or have gotten immediately. And so I try not to get hung up on those things. I try not to get hung up on those, things, and just be super grateful that I'm in a position where I have healthcare for myself and my son, and I'm able to, take care of the foundations. But there hasn't been a day where, I didn't feel like, I'm lying here. I'm an imposter here. You know what I mean? Like, I don't belong here. Fuck, I have 2 bullet wounds in me. What the fuck am I doing at a tech company? You know what I'm saying? Like, there hasn't been a day that's gone by. Even when I would release the big stuff that everyone, oh, this is great, and holy shit, this is incredible, there was still that thing in the back of my head, like, you're from Oakland, you felon. You know what I mean? Like, you fell, you got one over on them. You know what I'm saying? So that's always been a constant narrative with all the work that I've done. And it's good and it's bad. It pushes me where other people wouldn't be pushed, and it's a detriment where it wouldn't be for other people also. So, and I recognize that. So, yeah.
I was about to say, like, Dante, I hope you are radically aware of the fact that given your circumstance and even all the different places you've been to, so many people would have ended up in a significantly worse place. Like, they would have taken even the one opportunity they got at Reddit and made a whole mess of it. And I feel like you are not kind enough to yourself about how far you've come.
I don't know. I have not yet done an audit on the things that I have done. I think a lot of it has to do with sort of my dad left some pretty significant shoes. So my dad was an immigrant from the Philippines, and he just dedicated his entire life to helping poor people. Like, that's what he did. And even so, I went on a little bit of a sabbatical from Reddit, and it was because right before the pandemic, I was managing and designing and sort of directing our largest ad campaign ever. I was in my zone. I was in my work zone. I was in my mode, and all-nighter after all-nighter, getting this thing right and making it a great experience. And then halfway through that experience, I get this email message from my dad. My dad had left for the Philippines. He had got sent back to the Philippines during that whole immigrant sort of backlash thing after 9/11. He got sent back to the Philippines, and it was hard for people to send emails out of the region that he was in the Philippines. And so he made the effort to go to find a computer email. And in this email, you could tell that he knew his time was limited. He was saying a lot of dumb things like, I'm sorry I let you down, stuff like that. And so I wrote an email back. You're crazy. I've been trying to live up to who you are all of my life. Like, it's, everything that I've done has been to try and like live up to the man that you were. And then he died, and the campaign was over. And then when he died, I went back to look for the email because it was the last words that I got from him. I didn't get, and then I tried to look for it and I couldn't find it. And I found, my stupid ass did a search, and I found it in the drafts folder. And so he never got the message. Like, he never got my reply. And so he died with all of those things, thinking that he had let me down and stuff. And so I spiraled into the super deep depression that was very, like, I had my Jerry Maguire moment at Reddit. Like, because I realized that I was a workaholic, and I got that from my dad too. Like, it's an addiction. Workaholism is an addiction. It is they call it a holism, like workaholic. I am a workaholic, and it is just as dangerous and destructive as any other addiction, because you lose sight of the things around you. The thing is that in Western culture, you get patted on the back for it. It's a detriment to your health and your family and your loved ones, but you are celebrated for your workaholic nature. And so there was a backlash against the work period. And so I went on a little break, and much credit to Steve. Like, Steve, told me like, don't make these kind of decisions. I was ready to walk. Like, I was ready to quit. And, much to his credit as a human being, he told me not to make those decisions emotionally. Don't take time. Don't make these kind of like life altering decisions out of emotion. Make them out of logic. Make them logically, not off of emotion, because emotion is what gets us in trouble with all of our all of our bad decisions are in some way led by emotion, right? All of our good ones too, but more often than not, a majority, if not all, of our bad decisions are made because they have this emotional tilt on us. Anyway, so I took some time off. And when I went to the funeral, as I'm at the funeral, there's this line of children that come to the funeral. Turns out that my dad had been, like, sponsoring this orphanage. There's like 90 orphan children come up, and, this is just something, didn't really tell us. He just did. And so I have not yet done an audit of all of the things, how far that I've come, because in my eyes, like, I still haven't reached that mark that he set. I still haven't reached that mark that he set, to where, and I don't think I ever will. It's just something that you can't do with work. It's not something that you can achieve with, your career highlights. It's not just something, it's more becoming a person, becoming someone that can live up to that metric, that can live up to that bar that he set. It's not something that comes with accomplishments. It's something that comes with growth and becoming a person. Not just a list of achievements. But I am very, very aware that I am super uber blessed to be in this position, given all of the shit that I had to crawl through to get here. And that's largely a product of that curiosity. You know what I mean? I'm curious. It's like, I want to know what will happen if we do this. I want to know what will happen if we do that. And that curiosity outweighs whatever social construct or other weight is on the other side of that. I don't care who I have to work with. I don't care. You know what I mean? I don't care what they look like or sound like, where they're from. I don't care if they're assholes. Like, I'm just curious in what will happen if we do this thing. And so that curiosity for that is definitely, I guess my superpower is just curiosity. I'm just curious as fuck about everything. Like what was it the other day? Oh, the other day I spent hours thinking about how incredible the invention of a toilet was. Like, a toilet is this perfect. It is. It's this perfect thing. It doesn't need electricity. It's powered by the gravity of the planet, and it just works. How crazy is that? You know what I mean? So, and I for hours I was thinking about this and the evolution of the toilet, and it's still the same exact theory and mechanism that it's always been, because it is a perfect invention. It just works. And so, stuff like that is, I'll go down rabbit holes on stuff like that for hours on a toilet And so imagine when we start to break into these things like AI, it's like I can go for days. I can go for days on a single aspect of that stuff. And so it is really, it is that curiosity.
I was about to say the two people you've mentioned in this interview, one is your father and one is your son. So you are talking three generations right now. What are some things that you are making sure your son gets from your father? And what are some things that you are breaking from at you and you're making sure your son never gets to see?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. My dad had this rock solid empathy that it was unshakable. It was unshakable. His ability to put himself second just to understand the perspective of who he's dealing with. I've never seen anything like it. I would hope that my son gets that. But so my son is half black, and his mother isn't really in the picture anymore. And during the whole like Black Lives Matter stuff and the whole, like when all of that was happening, I was kind of at a loss. For what do I do? I can't empathize. And it's a lie to pretend that I can in some of those situations. I don't know what it's like to feel like because of the color of my skin, the police might shoot me. Like when I walk outside, like I don't know what that's like. And so there were a lot of things that I could not empathize well enough. And so those two things contrasted, where I'm trying to be someone that could empathize like my dad, but I can't even do that with my own son. In this really weird time. That was a really weird time, It was like we've never seen anything like that. And so, if anything, I would hope that empathy could pass along to him, but I know that he is already built and equipped with sort of the raw end of the empathization. You know what I mean? He already has to empathize by nature. Like by default, he's sitting in a position of empathy. And so I guess that's one of the things that I would pass on. One of the things that I hope does not pass on to him is just like that workaholic. Like I hope he doesn't become, like I hope he does not inherit that thing in the back of his head that says, no, keep going. Yeah. Like I need to rest. No, you don't. No, you don't. You need to finish this. You need to see what happens on the other end of this, at the end of this tunnel. Just keep going, push until the wheels fall off. Like, we spent a large part of our careers being celebrated for that work ethic. That's not work ethic. That's suicide. And I've broken down several times because of it. And I hope that does not, because for as much cool shit that it has produced, I have also missed out on a ton of cool shit also. I have missed out on, I'm terrible at relationships. I'm terrible at those other really cool things. Like I'm just terrible at relationships because whoever I'm with knows that they will always be the side chick to my hustle. And I'm trying to break free of that, but I'm not going to lie to them and pretend it's any other way. I'm not going to lie and pretend to them that I've solved that. I have not solved that yet. When there's an idea that I'm passionate about, I don't know what time is. I just go. I'm just 150% in. I lose track of time, like in Vegas, all the clocks disappear. I don't know. I just keep going and going and going. And that's not a good thing. There is a time where that kind of grind and grit is helpful, but not all the time. So, yeah.
Oh my God, we only have 2 minutes left, and I have like two questions I just have. Since you've been everywhere and you've seen so much, when was the one moment in life that really radicalized you, that made you realize there's something I really hate about this society, and this was the moment that showed it to me? And where can people buy your art and find you online?
Yeah. The one, yeah, for sure. The one moment the one moment that showed me like we may be doing this all wrong was definitely during the pandemic when everything shut down. Like those systems that we had trust in, we can't really trust them to keep this stuff together. It broke apart so easily. But something happened also where it pushed us out into nature again. Like we got to see, and so I went on this trip and just went out into nature. You know, the park services were gone. They had not been, so it was just me and a friend, and we were alone. And it was just, it brought back that's why I moved to Hawaii, because this is like, it's nature out here. And so knowing that this place was exponentially better without those systems in place, at that moment, at that time, it was just such a beautiful thing. Like we had to get our own food. We had to be self-sustained. We had to, when you took away all of those systems that we had been told and that we had trusted all of our lives to be necessary, when you took those away, it actually turned out the world was a better place. At least, you know what I mean? It actually turned out, and this is no disrespect to people who lost loved ones from COVID. This is just what life was. At that time, there was no systems in place. Everything had shut down, and it was actually it brought us back to the root of what we were doing. Like we learned to love each other again. We learned to make sure that the people that we were with were actually the people we should be with. You know what I mean? We were locked indoors with them. You better make sure that those people are the people that you're supposed to be with. So that was the one moment. It was definitely the one moment. And where can they find me? On Instagram, I'm Knuckle Fat, just spelled how it's a knuckle fat, one word. And if you want to buy some art, it's at the Art of Dante, the Art of Dante.com. I believe the Art of Dante.com is where you can grab some watercolors and stuff.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Don.
Oh, thank you.